You touch me again, and you better arrest me for real this time. Marcus Reed's voice stayed low even after the slap echoed across the station lobby. The sound cracked through the room harder than the buzzing fluorescent lights overhead. Officer Derek Collins stepped closer, jaw tight, badge shining under the white ceiling lights. You do not tell me what to do in my station, he snapped. You walk in here dressed like that, flashing attitude, carrying a sealed folder, and expect respect? A woman near the waiting chairs slowly lowered her coffee cup. Someone else raised a phone. A teenager whispered, "Yo, he really slapped him." Marcus stood still beside the intake desk. Navy work uniform. Faded patch on the chest. Scuffed boots. Dark brown skin lined with exhaustion. One side of his face reddened from the hit, but his eyes never dropped. In one hand, he still held a black folder against his ribs like it mattered more than the pain. Collins pointed at it immediately. "Put the damn folder down." Marcus answered calmly. "You already crossed procedure." Collins laughed once. Sharp. Ugly. Procedure. He looked around the station lobby so everyone could hear him. This guy thinks he is a lawyer now. Quiet chuckles spread through the room. Two officers near the coffee machine smirked. A dispatcher avoided eye contact completely. Marcus slowly bent down to pick up a small metal flash drive that had slipped from the folder during the slap. Collins slammed a boot over it first. Evidence stays on the floor. Marcus looked at the boot. Then at Collins. Chain of custody starts the moment you interfere. That made Detective Luis Moreno glance up from the report desk. Just for a second. Collins noticed it too. Do not encourage him, Collins barked. This man has been causing problems all morning. Marcus finally spoke louder. Not angry. Just clear enough for the room to hear. I came here because someone inside this building requested this delivery personally. Collins stepped closer again. You came here pretending to belong. The lobby carried that strange silence people make when they know something is wrong but nobody wants to be the first to say it. Behind Marcus, the television mounted in the corner played muted local news while rain streaked down the front station windows. A little boy sitting beside his mother stared at Marcus's uniform. Mom, he whispered softly, why is the cop hitting him? The mother pulled the child closer without answering. Marcus swallowed once. His hand trembled slightly around the black folder now. Not from fear. From restraint. Collins saw the shaking and smiled like he had already won. Look at you, he said. You cannot even hold your hand steady. Marcus answered quietly. I have been awake for 36 hours. Not my problem. Collins grabbed the folder from Marcus's grip. Papers nearly spilled out. One page flashed briefly under the station lights. Federal seal. Moreno saw it. His expression changed for half a second. Collins slammed the folder shut before anyone else got a clear look. Fake paperwork, he announced immediately. People print this garbage online every day. Marcus took one step forward. Do not open that here. Collins grinned. Or what? Another officer moved closer now. Bigger. Younger. Hand resting near his belt. The lobby tension thickened. Phone stayed raised. Someone near the back quietly started recording again after pretending to stop. Marcus looked around the room slowly. Reception desk. Holding hallway. Security camera blinking red above the entrance. Rain outside. Every face already deciding what kind of man he must be. How quickly do people trust a badge over a human being? Collins shoved Marcus backward toward the wall beside the intake desk. You people always walk in acting important, he said coldly. Then cry discrimination the second somebody checks you. Moreno looked uncomfortable now. Derek, Collins cut him off instantly. Stay out of it. Marcus steadied himself against the wall. His eyes lifted once toward the blinking bodycam attached to Collins's chest. "Your camera is still recording," he said. Collins smirked. "Good." Then he leaned closer. "That way everybody gets to watch you escorted out." The station doors opened suddenly behind them. Cold rain air rushed in. Captain Elena Brooks stepped inside carrying files under one arm. She stopped when she saw the crowd gathered near intake. "What is going on?" Collins answered before anyone else could speak. "Trespassing situation. Guy refuses to cooperate." Brooks's eyes moved to Marcus. Then to the black folder. Then briefly to the flash drive still trapped under Collins's boot. Marcus finally spoke directly to her. "Captain Brooks. You may want to check your incoming authorization requests before this gets worse." Collins laughed again. "See? He knows names now." Brooks frowned slightly. "How do you know my name?" Marcus did not answer immediately. That silence bothered Collins more than yelling would have. "Enough," Collins snapped. He grabbed Marcus's wrist hard and turned him toward the holding hallway. "You are done talking." The crowd parted as Marcus was dragged past them. Phones followed. Whispers followed. Nobody stepped in. Nobody stopped it. As Collins shoved Marcus toward the steel security door, the computer behind the intake desk suddenly beeped loud enough to cut through the room. The dispatcher froze. On the monitor, a restricted access window opened by itself. One line flashed across the screen in red letters. "Authorization pending, special access request linked to, M. Reed." The entire front desk slowly went quiet. The steel security door slammed behind Marcus Reed with a heavy metallic echo that stayed in his chest long after Officer Collins walked away. Outside the narrow holding corridor window, he could still hear muffled whispers from the station lobby. Phones recording. Someone laughing nervously. Someone saying, he should not have mouthed off to a cop. Marcus sat slowly on the hard bench inside the waiting room. His right cheek still burned from the slap. In his lap sat the same black folder Collins had failed to confiscate completely. One corner had bent during the struggle. Marcus pressed it flat carefully, like the papers inside mattered more than his own pride. Through the glass, the dispatcher kept glancing toward the monitor that still displayed the strange authorization request tied to his name. Captain Elena Brooks stood nearby now, arms folded tightly. She looked confused more than angry. Collins kept talking over her. Marcus could not hear every word, but he caught enough. Fake credentials. Trying to intimidate officers. Probably stolen. Same story. Different room. Marcus lowered his eyes for a moment. Exhaustion sat on him like wet concrete. 36 hours awake. 3 buses across the city. One unopened bottle of blood pressure medication still resting in the pocket of his faded uniform jacket. He rubbed his thumb across the old wedding ring hanging from a chain around his neck. He never wore it on his hand anymore. The skin there had grown too thin after the hospital months. A soft vibration came from his pocket. His daughter's name lit the cracked screen. "Kiera." Marcus answered immediately. "Baby." "Dad," her voice sounded tired. Young, but trying hard to sound strong. "I saw the video." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Of course she had. Everything reached the internet now before truth even had a chance to stand up. "You should be resting," he told her gently. "Your shift starts at 6. They are calling you dangerous online." Silence stretched between them. Marcus looked down at the black folder again. People believe uniforms before people. Kiera swallowed hard on the other end. "Mama used to say dignity is what you keep after they take everything else." That hit him harder than the slap. Across the corridor, Collins suddenly laughed loud enough for Marcus to hear through the glass. This clown actually thinks federal paperwork scares us. Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. He said nothing. His fingers rested over the edge of the folder instead. Inside sat documents he had promised someone he would deliver personally. A promise made beside a hospital bed 3 nights earlier. A promise to a dying man whose oxygen monitor kept flatlining between sentences. Marcus reached into the folder carefully. Not for the papers. For the old photograph tucked between them. A faded image of 2 younger officers standing beside a patrol car 20 years ago. One white. One black. Smiling like brothers. Marcus stared at it quietly. Then slid it away again before anyone could see. A young janitor pushing a mop bucket paused outside the holding room. Maybe 19 years old. Skinny kid. Nervous eyes. He glanced around before speaking softly. "Sir. I do not think you belong back there." Marcus looked up. "Neither did my wife in her last hospital room." The kid froze. Marcus gave a tired smile afterward, apologizing without words for making the air heavier. The janitor hesitated. Then quietly slid a small item through the opening beneath the door. The metal flash drive Collins had stepped on earlier. "They missed this," he whispered. Marcus stared at it for a second. Tiny. Scratched. Powerful enough to make people nervous. If you have ever been judged by your clothes, your age, your skin, or the job written on your uniform, then you already know how lonely silence can feel. Tell me where you are watching from, and whether you still believe Marcus belongs in that room. The janitor suddenly looked frightened. Footsteps approached fast. Collins appeared again from around the corner. "What did I tell you?" he barked at the kid. "Move." The janitor hurried away immediately. Collins spotted the flash drive in Marcus's hand. His face changed for half a second. "Tiny. But real. You still have that?" Marcus answered calmly. "You seem very worried about it." Collins unlocked the holding room halfway but did not open it fully. "You think some cheap USB stick changes facts?" Marcus leaned back slowly. "Depends what your body cam recorded before you turned it off." That made Collins go still. Just for a second. Then anger came back harder. "Careful." Marcus's voice stayed quiet. "I noticed the red indicator disappear." From the front desk, Captain Brooks suddenly called out, "Collins." He turned sharply. "What?" Brooks stood beside the computer monitor now. The restricted access window had expanded again by itself. Another line appeared beneath Marcus's name. "Request verified, Federal Response ETA, 14 minutes. Collins walked toward the desk immediately. Too fast. Too nervous. Marcus watched through the narrow glass as Brooks slowly lifted her eyes toward him for the first time, not with suspicion, but with a question. Then the station phone rang. The dispatcher answered once, and her face lost all color. The dispatcher's face stayed pale even after she lowered the phone slowly back onto its cradle. Nobody in the front lobby moved at first. Rain hammered the station windows harder now. Officer Collins stepped toward the desk immediately. "Who was that?" he demanded. The dispatcher hesitated. "They asked for Captain Brooks." Collins slammed one hand against the counter. "Who asked?" Before she could answer, Captain Elena Brooks took the receiver herself. "This is Brooks." Silence spread again while everyone pretended not to listen. Marcus Reed watched through the holding room glass as Brooks's posture slowly changed. Less irritated. More alert. "Understood," she finally said quietly. "We are securing the situation now." Collins folded his arms. "Captain, this guy is playing games." Brooks did not answer him immediately. Her eyes drifted toward Marcus again instead. That bothered Collins more than anything else in the room. Outside the station entrance, more civilians had gathered beneath the awning, staring through the glass after the video online started spreading. Marcus could hear fragments through the hallway. That is him. He touched a cop first. No, the officer hit him. Same thing. The world always decided fast when it saw a black man standing beside a police officer. Marcus sat quietly on the bench while fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Across from him sat an old bulletin board covered in faded missing person flyers and community notices nobody read anymore. One flyer had half-torn corners. A smiling teenage boy. Missing 3 years. Marcus stared at it longer than most people would have. Then he looked away slowly. His own father had disappeared into the prison system when Marcus was 12. No cameras cared back then either. Collins unlocked the holding room suddenly and stepped inside. Stand up. Marcus obeyed calmly. Collins smirked. See? You can follow orders. Marcus answered without emotion. I always do. Lawful ones. Collins's jaw tightened immediately. You think you are smarter than everybody here because you memorized a few procedures? Marcus said nothing. That silence kept irritating people more than shouting ever could. Collins leaned closer. You know what your problem is? You walk around in that uniform expecting respect. He glanced at Marcus's faded navy work patch again. Maintenance workers fix pipes. They do not lecture police officers. Marcus looked directly at him for the first time since the slap. A uniform only matters if the person inside it remembers why they wear it. Collins laughed once, but weaker this time. Outside the room, Detective Moreno quietly reopened the station computer logs. His eyes narrowed slightly. One system request tied to Marcus Reed had been manually blocked 23 minutes earlier. By Collins. Moreno glanced toward him carefully. Derek, why would you override an incoming federal authorization? Collins snapped back instantly. Because it looked fake. Without checking. I said it looked fake. Captain Brooks heard that exchange. She did not interrupt, but her expression hardened slightly now. Tiny cracks were starting to appear. Marcus noticed them too. A young woman sitting near the waiting chairs suddenly stood up. Early 20s. Grocery store uniform. Nervous hands clutching her phone. I was outside earlier, she said softly. The officer shoved him first. Collins turned sharply toward her. Ma'am, unless you want to be charged with interference, sit down. She froze immediately. Fear won again. Marcus lowered his eyes. He had seen this his whole life. Truth stepping forward, then backing away once power raised its voice. Near the front desk, the little boy from earlier tugged on his mother's sleeve again. Mom, he whispered, why is that man still locked up if the camera saw everything? The mother pulled him closer and quietly said, because life is complicated. Marcus heard it through the hallway. His face changed for the first time. Just a flicker of hurt. Life was always called complicated whenever justice became inconvenient. Collins grabbed the black folder from the evidence tray again. Enough. He held it up for the room to see. This garbage story ends now. Marcus stepped forward instinctively. Be careful with that. Collins smiled coldly. There it is. Finally something you care about. He opened the folder halfway. Several official-looking forms. Sealed transfer records. One photograph clipped inside. Collins barely glanced before slamming it shut again. But Moreno saw enough. The same older black officer from Marcus's faded photo appeared in one of the documents beside a federal insignia. Moreno's eyes lifted slowly toward Marcus. Where did you get this? Marcus answered carefully. From someone who trusted me. Before Moreno could ask another question, every monitor in the station flickered once. Then twice. A warning box appeared across the front desk screens. Bodycam file recovery in progress. Collins immediately moved toward the computers. Too fast. Too panicked. Shut that down, he barked. Now. Brooks stepped in front of the keyboard first. The room fell quiet again. Then the dispatcher whispered something nobody expected. "Captain, part of the deleted footage just came back." Collins stopped breathing for half a second. And Marcus finally tightened his grip around the small metal flash drive hidden inside his palm. The station monitors flickered again. White static rolled across the screens for half a second before frozen bodycam footage appeared frame by frame. Officer Collins cursed under his breath immediately. "Turn it off." Nobody moved. Captain Elena Brooks stepped closer to the front desk monitor instead. Detective Moreno leaned beside her, eyes narrowed. Marcus Reed remained behind the holding room glass, silent, one hand still wrapped around the hidden flash drive in his pocket. The recovered footage showed the station lobby from earlier that morning. Rain on the doors. Civilians waiting. Collins approaching Marcus first. Then the image froze again before the slap itself appeared. "Corrupted file," Collins snapped instantly. "That proves nothing." Marcus spoke calmly from behind the glass. "Bodycam buffers automatically every 30 seconds before manual shutdown." The room went quiet for a beat. Collins turned sharply toward him. "What did you say?" Marcus looked at the frozen screen. "You disabled the active feed too late." Moreno slowly looked back at Marcus now. Not like a suspect anymore. Like a problem that did not fit the story. "How would you know department buffer timing?" Collins cut in fast. "Anybody can Google police procedure." Marcus did not answer. He simply noticed something else on the paused footage first. "Zoom lower left corner," he said quietly. Brooks hesitated, then nodded toward the dispatcher. The image enlarged slightly. A timestamp blinked beneath the frame. 8 hours 14 minutes and 33 seconds, Marcus spoke again. "There should be a second angle from intake camera 2 overlapping that timestamp." Moreno frowned immediately. "How do you know our lobby camera placement?" Collins slammed one hand against the desk. "Enough." But now even the officers near the coffee machine had stopped pretending not to care. The little boy near the waiting chairs pointed innocently at the screen. That officer looked mad before the other man even talked. His mother pulled his hand down quickly, embarrassed. Still, several people heard him. Collins pointed toward Marcus angrily. "This guy walks in carrying fake federal paperwork, quoting procedures, acting like he runs the place." Marcus finally stepped closer to the holding room glass. "No. I walked in expecting basic restraint." That sentence landed harder than yelling would have. Brooks folded her arms tighter now. "Detective Moreno," she said carefully, "pull intake camera 2. Collins interrupted instantly. "Captain, with respect, we are wasting resources on a trespassing complaint. Then it should be easy to verify." Collins's face hardened. Tiny cracks again. Dangerous ones. Moreno typed quickly at the station terminal. Then stopped. "Camera 2 files are missing." Silence. Collins answered too fast. "System glitch." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "No," everybody looked toward him again. "Not a glitch." Collins barked back immediately. "You do not get to speak." Marcus ignored the anger completely. If it was corruption, the archive log would still show partial indexing. Moreno stared at the monitor. His fingers slowly stopped moving across the keyboard. Because Marcus was right. The deletion path is manual, Moreno admitted quietly. Collins stepped forward fast. "That does not prove I deleted anything." Marcus's eyes moved once toward Collins's chest. Toward the bodycam mount. "No," he said softly. But your camera serial number will. The room fell still again. That was not normal knowledge. Not from a tired maintenance worker in a faded uniform. Brooks looked at Marcus longer this time. Careful. Measuring. Collins laughed harshly to break the tension. What next? He claims he trained internal affairs too. Nobody laughed with him. Near the doorway, the young janitor from earlier lowered his mop slowly. Watching. Listening. A tiny seed of doubt had entered the room now. That scared Collins more than evidence. Suddenly the station computer beeped again. Moreno opened another recovered archive window. A partial personnel access log appeared. One line highlighted read. Override request, authorized by D. Collins. Collins moved immediately toward the keyboard. That system is incomplete. Brooks stepped in front of him first. Do not touch anything. The station lobby went silent enough to hear rainwater dripping from officers' jackets onto the tile floor. Marcus slowly removed the old photograph from his folder again. Just for a second. Moreno caught a clear glimpse this time. The older black officer in the picture wore the same departmental commendation pin Captain Brooks wore on formal occasions. Moreno's expression shifted instantly. Recognition. Where did you get that photo? He asked quietly. Marcus slid it away again before answering. From somebody this station forgot. Collins saw the photograph disappear back into the folder. And for the first time all day, real panic flashed across his face. Before anyone could speak again, the holding room buzzer unlocked loudly behind Marcus. Brooks looked directly at him. Mr. Reed, she said carefully, bring the folder out here. Collins immediately stepped forward. Captain, that is a mistake. But the station monitors suddenly refreshed one more time. A new recovered frame loaded onto the screen. Freeze frame. Collins's raised hand. Marcus standing still. Timestamp visible. And in the corner of the image, the edge of a federal credential case partially exposed beneath Marcus's jacket. The recovered frame stayed frozen on every monitor in the station lobby. Officer Collins's hand raised. Marcus Reed standing still. The edge of a federal credential case barely visible beneath his faded jacket. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then Collins laughed loudly. Too loudly. That, he scoffed. Anybody can buy fake credentials online. He walked toward the screens fast and jabbed a finger at the image. Look at him. Maintenance uniform. Worn boots. You think federal agents ride city buses carrying folders and bargain jackets? A few nervous chuckles came from the back of the lobby. Not many this time. Captain Brooks kept staring at the image. Detective Moreno leaned closer to the monitor instead. Zoom the credential. Collins snapped immediately. No, the room noticed that word. Sharp. Defensive. Marcus stood near the holding room doorway now, wrists free but posture guarded. He still held the black folder tightly under one arm. You seem afraid of small details, he said quietly. Collins turned toward him with open contempt. I am afraid of liars wasting police resources. He pointed toward the station exit. You are done here. Marcus did not move. The transfer package was supposed to reach this station before noon. Collins stepped closer again. There is no package. Marcus's eyes flicked briefly toward the monitors. Then why delete intake footage? Silence cracked across the lobby again. One officer near the report desk slowly looked away. Collins immediately barked louder to regain control. Because this man became aggressive. He never swung, the young janitor whispered from near the hallway. Collins spun toward him instantly. You want to lose your job too? The janitor froze. Mop handle trembling in his hands. Fear won again. Brooks finally stepped forward. Derek, enough intimidation. Collins shook his head in disbelief. Captain, you are seriously entertaining this? He grabbed the black folder suddenly from Marcus's arm before anyone could stop him. Papers slipped loose across the intake counter. One document unfolded halfway under the bright station lights. Moreno caught a glimpse of a typed line before Collins tried to slam it shut again. Federal Witness Transfer Authorization. Moreno looked up slowly. Witness transfer. Collins immediately snatched the paper back. Forgery. Marcus's voice stayed calm. Check the authorization code. Collins laughed again. You memorized fake serial numbers too? Marcus answered softly, no. I memorized yours. That line landed differently. Even Brooks noticed it. Collins shoved the papers back into the folder carelessly. You know what your real problem is? He snapped. You walk in acting important because somebody somewhere once gave you access. He leaned closer. This is a police station. Not some social experiment. Marcus looked directly at him. Law is not personal property. Collins's jaw tightened hard enough to show through his cheeks. Near the waiting area, phones kept recording quietly now. Nobody laughed anymore. The little boy from earlier whispered again, Mom, why does the officer keep yelling if he is right? His mother did not answer this time. Brooks finally held out her hand toward Collins. Give me the folder. Collins ignored her completely. No, Brooks's expression darkened. That was not a request. Before Collins could answer, one of the dispatch monitors beeped sharply again. System alert, archived bodycam segment detected. Moreno clicked quickly. A partial recovery window opened. Audio only this time. Static filled the lobby speakers first. Then a voice. Collins's voice. Turn the camera off. Every officer in the room went still. Collins immediately lunged toward the keyboard and killed the speaker volume before the next sentence could play. Corrupted audio, he snapped instantly. Could be edited. But now even Brooks looked shaken. Marcus quietly bent down and picked up one loose page Collins had missed near the counter edge. He folded it once and slipped it calmly back inside the folder before anyone noticed. Except Moreno did notice. And Collins noticed Moreno noticing. That scared him. Enough, Collins barked loudly. Escort him out. Two uniformed officers hesitated before moving this time. Small hesitation. But real. Marcus looked exhausted now. Eyes heavy. Shoulders tense. Yet he still stood straight. You already know the footage continues after the audio cut, he said quietly. Collins pointed toward the exit doors. Get him off my floor. Brooks suddenly spoke without raising her voice. Your floor. Collins froze for half a second. Tiny mistake. Tiny crack. But several people heard it. Moreno slowly turned back toward the terminal again. Captain, he said carefully. There is another archive source. Collins moved immediately. Too fast. Lock the system. But before he reached the keyboard, the screen flashed red again. External recovery request accepted. Then another line appeared beneath it. Original bodycam server connection established. Collins stopped breathing for a second. And Marcus quietly tightened his hand around the folded paper still hidden inside the black folder. The red warning on the monitor kept flashing across the station lobby. Original bodycam server connection established. Nobody moved for a second. Even the dispatch radio sounded quieter now. Officer Collins stepped toward the terminal again, jaw tight, one hand already reaching for the keyboard. Detective Moreno blocked him first. Do not touch it. Collins forced a laugh that sounded thinner than before. You are seriously treating corrupted files like federal evidence? Marcus Reed stayed near the intake counter, shoulders tired but steady. The black folder remained tucked beneath his arm. Captain Brooks looked from the screen to Marcus again. Longer this time. More carefully. Who exactly are you? Marcus did not answer directly. Someone your officer should have identified before putting hands on me. That sentence hit harder than shouting could have. A quiet murmur moved through the lobby. One of the younger officers slowly lowered his phone. On the monitor, the archive progress bar crawled forward. 12%. 18%. 23%. Then another alert appeared beneath it. Matching incident log found. Collins immediately pointed toward Marcus. He planted this. He walked in here trying to bait officers. By getting slapped. Moreno asked sharply. Collins ignored him. You know these people record everything now. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. These people. The words hung in the air. Near the waiting area, the elderly desk clerk who had stayed silent most of the night suddenly whispered, I saw him show ID before Collins shoved him. Collins turned fast. You did not see anything clearly. She looked down immediately. Fear again. But the damage was done. Brooks stepped closer to the monitor. Open the matched log. Collins snapped louder. Captain, that violates procedure. Marcus answered calmly before Brooks could speak. Federal cross-agency transfer logs override local restriction under Section 8. 14. Moreno looked at Marcus sharply after hearing the exact code. Too exact. Too fast. Collins noticed that reaction too. Anybody can memorize regulations, he barked. But sweat had started forming near his collar now. Moreno opened the matched file anyway. A scanned intake sheet appeared on screen for less than 2 seconds before the system glitched. But it was enough. Enough for several officers to see the federal seal watermark across the corner. The room shifted. Tiny movement. Tiny silence. Collins immediately grabbed the monitor cable and yanked it loose. The screen went black. System failure, he said quickly. Too quickly. That server has been unstable for months. Funny timing, Moreno muttered. Marcus stayed still. Calm. Controlled. But his grip tightened slightly around the folder. A folded photograph slipped halfway out before he caught it. The young janitor near the hallway stared suddenly. I know that photo. Everyone looked toward him. The janitor swallowed hard. I saw it earlier, when he dropped his papers. Collins pointed instantly. Stay out of this. But the janitor kept staring at Marcus now. That woman in the picture, he hesitated. She was at the federal memorial ceremony last year. Silence hit the room again. Collins walked forward aggressively. Enough. He snatched at the edge of the photograph, but Marcus pulled it back first. Not violently. Just firmly. For 1 second, the picture stayed visible under the lobby lights. A younger Marcus in dress uniform beside a decorated federal commander. Brooks saw it clearly. Moreno saw the service ribbon. Collins saw both of them noticing. Old photos do not prove anything, Collins snapped immediately. Marcus folded the picture carefully and slid it back into the folder. Neither do, lies repeated loudly. A few officers looked away after that. If you were standing in that lobby, what would you think Collins was really afraid of? The missing footage? The federal seal? Or the man he never bothered to identify before humiliating him in front of everyone? The tension only tightened after that thought settled into the room. Brooks crossed her arms slowly. Reconnect the monitor. Collins shook his head. Not without legal review. Moreno frowned. Since when do you care about legal review? A few quiet snickers escaped before dying instantly again. Collins heard them. His face hardened. Everybody here needs to remember chain of command. Then he pointed directly at Marcus once more. And he stays detained until this gets sorted out. Marcus finally spoke again. Quiet. Precise. You already know the footage was not deleted. Collins froze for half a heartbeat. Too small for most people to catch. Not too small for Brooks. What did you just say? She asked. Marcus looked directly at Collins instead. He moved the original upload. Moreno's eyes widened slightly. Transferred where? Marcus glanced toward the disconnected monitor. Not where local officers can erase it. Collins stepped backward slowly now. First real fear. Then another terminal beeped across the lobby. An incoming encrypted notification flashed briefly across the side screen. Federal access request pending authorization. The entire room went still again. And this time, even Collins did not speak immediately. The encrypted notification stayed glowing on the side monitor like a warning nobody inside the station could ignore anymore. Federal access request pending authorization. Officer Collins stared at it without blinking. Then his radio crackled sharply against his shoulder. Collins, conference room. Now. He switched it off immediately. Too fast. Captain Brooks noticed. So did Marcus Reed. The station lobby had gone strangely quiet now. Even the officers pretending to work kept looking back toward Marcus. Not at his faded security uniform anymore. At the folder in his hands. At the old photograph. At the calm he refused to lose. Marcus finally sat down near the vending machines while Moreno stayed beside the disconnected monitor. His fingers trembled slightly as he opened the worn folder again. Inside were creased documents, an old service coin, and the photograph Collins had tried to grab. The edges looked soft from years of being carried. Brooks stepped closer carefully this time. Why keep all this with you? Marcus looked at the picture for several seconds before answering. Because some people work very hard to erase what happened. Brooks said nothing after that. Marcus pulled another item from the folder. A folded hospital bill. Old. Yellowed. Paid in full across the front. Brooks glanced down at the name attached to it and frowned slightly before Marcus folded it closed again. Your wife? She asked quietly. Marcus nodded once. Cancer. The word landed softly. Harder than shouting. Near the hallway, the young janitor lowered his eyes immediately. Marcus leaned back against the cold wall. I missed her last appointment because I stayed late covering someone else's shift. Silence again. She died 3 months later. Brooks looked toward the floor. Marcus continued without anger. After that, every uniform looked the same to me. People stopped seeing the man inside it. His voice stayed calm, but tiredness lived inside every word now. Moreno finally spoke from across the room. You still kept serving. Marcus gave a faint nod. A promise is a promise. The old service coin rested in his palm now. Scratched silver. Federal insignia nearly worn smooth. One of the younger officers nearby whispered to another, that is not local issue. Collins returned from the hallway before anyone could answer. His face looked tighter now. More desperate. Enough story time, he snapped. He is manipulating all of you. Marcus quietly slid the coin back into the folder. Collins pointed directly at him again. You think a dead wife makes you innocent? Brooks immediately turned. Watch your mouth. Collins ignored her. This man walked into a secure station carrying restricted documents. Marcus answered calmly. Documents you tried to destroy. That hit harder than before. Collins stepped forward aggressively. You have no proof. Moreno suddenly lifted something from the evidence counter. A bodycam docking receipt. Printed timestamp. Actually, he said slowly, I might. Collins froze. Moreno held up the paper carefully. The upload transfer happened under your authorization code. A few officers exchanged nervous looks instantly. Collins tried recovering fast. Anyone could spoof a code. Not manually, Moreno replied. The station felt colder now. Marcus looked exhausted more than victorious. That made everything worse for Collins somehow. One of the dispatch clerks approached Marcus quietly, then handed him a small paper cup of coffee. You should not have been treated like that, she whispered. Marcus accepted it with both hands. Thank you. Simple words. Honest ones. For the first time all night, someone looked embarrassed instead of entertained. Then Marcus noticed something inside the folder again. A handwritten note attached behind the old photograph. He stared at it longer than before. Brooks noticed. What is it? Marcus turned the paper slightly. Just enough for her to see a partial signature beneath faded ink. Brooks's expression changed instantly. Wait. She leaned closer. I know that name. Collins moved immediately. Captain, do not touch anything else until legal arrives. Too late. Brooks was already staring hard at the signature now. This was filed during the Harbor Street operation. Marcus slowly looked up. Real emotion crossed his face for the first time. Pain. Memory. You remember it? Brooks nodded carefully. I was a rookie officer. Moreno looked between them. What operation? Neither answered immediately. Then the elderly desk clerk near intake suddenly whispered with shaking breath, I remember that day. Every head turned toward her. Collins went pale instantly. The old woman pointed weakly toward the folder in Marcus's hands. That photograph, your partner took it before the shooting. The room went dead silent again. And this time, even Brooks looked afraid of what the next unlocked file might reveal. The station lobby doors locked automatically with a sharp electronic click. That sound alone made several people look up. Officer Collins immediately stepped toward Captain Brooks before anyone else could speak. Nobody leaves until Internal Affairs reviews this, he announced loudly. His voice carried across the room like he still owned it. Like he could still force the story back under control. Marcus Reed stayed seated near the vending machines, the old folder resting quietly in his lap now. The exhaustion in his face looked deeper under the fluorescent lights. But he still sat straighter than Collins did. Brooks crossed her arms slowly. You are not in command here anymore. Collins forced a bitter laugh. Because of an old picture and a fake upload log. Moreno stepped closer to the evidence desk. The authorization code was yours. Then someone stole it, Collins snapped instantly. Maybe him. He pointed at Marcus again. Some of the younger officers shifted awkwardly. A few still looked uncertain. Uniforms carried weight inside places like this. Authority always did. Collins saw that hesitation and pushed harder. You all want to throw away a decorated officer because some guy in a faded uniform knows procedure. That line worked on a few people. Marcus noticed it immediately. The whispers returned. Someone near intake muttered, maybe he really is setting this up. Another officer slowly nodded. Public doubt moved fast. Faster than truth. Collins turned toward Marcus with renewed confidence. You walked in here looking for trouble. Marcus answered quietly, no. I walked in asking for help. Collins smirked. Funny way to ask. He motioned toward the security officers near the hallway. Escort him out. The younger security guard hesitated. Just slightly. Collins barked louder. Now. Marcus stood on his own before anyone touched him. Calm again. Controlled again. But the old photograph remained visible between the papers inside his folder now. The janitor near the hallway noticed it first. So did Brooks. A corner of the photograph showed part of a federal shoulder patch. Not local police. Federal Tactical Division. Collins quickly stepped between them. Enough with the photo. He grabbed the folder suddenly. Papers spilled across the station floor. Gasps broke through the room. Marcus bent immediately to gather them, but Collins kicked one paper aside before he could reach it. A hospital receipt slid under the evidence desk. Another page stopped near Brooks's shoes. She picked it up carefully. Her expression tightened immediately. Transfer denied, internal review request sealed. Signed 12 years earlier. Collins saw the page and moved fast. That document is classified. Brooks did not hand it back. Why was his review sealed? Collins looked around the room now instead of answering directly. Because some operations require silence. Marcus slowly stood again. No. Some careers require scapegoats. Silence crashed into the room again. Collins pointed hard toward him. You failed protocol that night. Marcus stared directly back. I reported corruption that night. Moreno looked sharply between both men now. Tiny pieces finally starting to connect. Collins noticed. Panic flickered underneath his anger for the first time. This man was suspended, Collins snapped toward the room. He lost his clearance. He lost his authority. Marcus answered softly. After I refused to sign a false statement. That landed differently. One officer quietly lowered his phone completely now. Another stopped recording. Brooks kept reading the sealed form in her hand. This file says witness testimony disappeared. Collins stepped forward immediately. Captain, put that down. Why? Brooks asked coldly. Because it names your partner. Collins froze for half a second. Too long. Too visible. Marcus closed his eyes briefly after hearing that word. Partner. The old wound sat openly in the room now even without details. Then the side terminal beeped again. System restoration, archived footage recovering 64%. Every head turned instantly. Collins moved toward the monitor fast. Moreno blocked him this time. Do not. Collins's jaw tightened hard. That footage is incomplete. Maybe, Moreno answered. Maybe not. For 1 second, Marcus looked like he might finally speak the whole truth. Instead, he only picked up the fallen photograph from the floor. His thumb brushed across the image carefully. Like grief had lived there for years. Then the elderly desk clerk whispered from intake, the other officer in that picture, he died 2 weeks after the Harbor Street case. Brooks looked up sharply. What? The old woman swallowed hard. Everyone said it was suicide. Collins shouted immediately. Enough. Too loud. Too fast. The room felt colder again. Then the recovered monitor flashed a frozen frame from old bodycam footage for less than 1 second. A younger Marcus. Federal tactical uniform. Another officer beside him. And standing partially in the background near a patrol car was a much younger Officer Collins. Brooks stared at the screen. You were there. Collins's face drained completely. Before he could answer, the station intercom suddenly crackled overhead. All personnel report to briefing room immediately. Federal representatives have arrived downstairs. Nobody in the lobby moved right away. The briefing room doors downstairs opened, but nobody from the lobby moved yet. Fear held the station still. Officer Collins recovered first. He straightened his uniform sharply and pointed toward Marcus Reed again like he could force control back through volume alone. This ends now. His voice echoed hard across the station. Escort him downstairs in restraints. Several officers hesitated. Collins barked louder. That is an order. Two security officers finally stepped forward. Marcus did not resist when they grabbed his arms. He only tightened his hand around the old folder before one guard pulled it away. Papers scattered again across the tile floor. This time nobody rushed to help him. Phones lifted again. Whispers returned. Public judgment always came easier than truth. Collins walked beside Marcus slowly, almost proudly now. You should have stayed buried. Marcus looked exhausted more than angry. Some graves do not stay closed. Collins leaned closer. You lost your badge 12 years ago. No, Marcus answered quietly. It was taken. That line silenced a few people nearby again. But Collins immediately raised his voice for the crowd. This man failed a federal operation. Innocent officers died because of him. Gasps spread through the lobby. Someone near intake whispered, Federal. Another officer muttered, I knew something was off. Collins saw the room turning uncertain again and pushed harder. He has been impersonating authority all night. Marcus kept walking between the guards without fighting. His shoulders looked heavier now. Older. But not broken. Captain Brooks stepped into their path. You still have not explained the sealed report. Collins snapped instantly. Because it is classified. Moreno stepped beside her holding the docking receipt. Or because the original footage says something different. Collins pointed at him sharply. One more word and you lose your shield. The threat worked. Moreno fell silent. Another false victory for Collins. The crowd felt it too. Authority still scared people more than doubt. Marcus was marched toward the center of the station lobby now where everyone could see him. Reception clerks. Officers. Civilians waiting near the holding desk. Phones recording openly again. Collins wanted witnesses. He wanted humiliation. Look at him, Collins announced loudly. A washed-up suspension case carrying fake federal records. Marcus lowered his eyes briefly. Not in shame. In pain. The young janitor near the hallway clenched his fists quietly. Brooks looked furious but trapped. Then one tiny thing changed. The recovered monitor beeped softly behind the desk. Archived frame rebuild 89%. Moreno noticed first. So did Marcus. Collins immediately stepped in front of the screen. Turn that off. Nobody moved. Collins shouted louder. Now. The dispatch clerk finally killed the monitor feed. Darkness again. Hope cut short again. Collins smirked slightly after that. See, he told the room. Nothing. Marcus looked toward the black screen for a long second. Then he spoke softly. You are afraid of 10 seconds of truth. Collins stepped close enough for only nearby officers to hear. I am afraid of traitors pretending to be heroes. Then he pulled something from Marcus's fallen folder. A worn federal identification holder. Empty now except for faded stitching and half a seal still visible beneath cracked plastic. The room leaned forward instantly. Collins held it up like a trophy. Expired. Revoked. Meaningless. Marcus's hand trembled for the first time all night. Tiny. Barely visible. But Brooks saw it. So did Moreno. That badge holder mattered. Collins noticed their reaction and smiled coldly. This is what happens when a man cannot let go of the past. He tossed the holder across the floor. It slid beneath the waiting bench near the lobby doors. Nobody moved to pick it up. That hurt more somehow. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. The old desk clerk whispered under her breath, that is cruel. Collins turned sharply toward the guards again. Take him downstairs. The security officers tightened their grip. Marcus was only a few steps from the hallway now. Almost removed completely. Almost erased again. Then the station system chimed loudly overhead. One sharp digital tone. Every monitor in the lobby flickered back on at once. Collins froze. The restored bodycam archive had overridden the shutdown manually. A single paused frame filled every screen in the station. Younger Marcus Reed in federal tactical uniform. Beside him stood another federal officer. And directly in front of both men was Officer Collins, 12 years younger, screaming into the camera while smoke filled the background. Under the image, one line flashed across every monitor. Witness Protection Transfer, Agent M. Reed. The room stopped breathing. Collins stared at the screens in horror. Then a voice thundered from the station entrance behind everyone. Take your hands off him. Right now. Take your hands off him. Right now. The voice rolled through the station lobby with the kind of authority that made people obey before thinking. Every head turned toward the entrance. 3 dark-suited federal agents stepped inside beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. Rainwater still clung to their coats. Behind them, another man entered slower. Older. Gray-haired. Calm. The silver credentials hanging near his belt caught the light for half a second before disappearing beneath his jacket again. Officer Collins immediately straightened his posture. This is an active local investigation, he said quickly. Too quickly. The older federal official ignored him completely at first. His eyes landed directly on Marcus Reed instead. The room felt smaller after that look. One of the security guards loosened his grip immediately. Marcus still said nothing. He only stood there quietly while every monitor in the station continued displaying the frozen bodycam frame from 12 years earlier. Younger Marcus. Smoke. Federal tactical gear. Collins in the background. Captain Brooks slowly stepped aside. Moreno stared openly now. The older official finally spoke. Who authorized physical detention? Collins answered before anyone else could. He interfered with police operations. Did he? The man asked calmly. No raised voice. Somehow worse. Collins pointed toward the monitors. Those files are incomplete. And yet, the official replied, you tried very hard to erase them. Silence spread wider through the lobby. Phones lowered slowly now. Even the dispatch radios sounded distant. Marcus bent down quietly and picked up the old federal ID holder Collins had thrown away minutes earlier. The cracked leather looked small in his hands now. Personal. Painful. He brushed dust from it carefully before sliding it back into the folder. That simple movement made several officers look away in shame. Collins noticed the shift immediately and pushed harder. This man lost federal clearance years ago. The older official finally turned toward him fully. Temporary witness protection reassignment is not the same as losing clearance. Collins froze. Tiny crack. Tiny panic. Brooks caught it instantly. Moreno stepped closer to the recovered monitor again. Sir, he said carefully to the federal official, the archive file mentions Harbor Street. The man gave one slow nod. Yes. Nobody breathed for a second after that answer. The elderly desk clerk near intake whispered softly, I knew I remembered his face. Marcus lowered his eyes briefly. Not proud. Not triumphant. Just tired. Collins tried again. He is manipulating all of you with old history. Marcus finally looked up. History does not disappear because it embarrasses you. That line cut through the room like glass. One of the younger officers quietly removed his bodycam from recording mode altogether. Another officer stepped farther away from Collins without realizing it. The station monitors flickered again. Archived footage ready for playback. Collins immediately pointed toward the dispatch desk. Turn it off. Nobody moved this time. The federal agents remained near the entrance now, silent but watchful. One of them placed a sealed evidence case carefully onto the front counter. Inside sat an old service badge, blackened around the edges from fire damage. Brooke stared hard at it. "That was recovered from Harbor Street," she asked quietly. The older official nodded once. "From the officer declared responsible." Collins interrupted sharply. "You cannot prove who wore that badge." Marcus looked at the evidence case for a long moment. His jaw tightened slightly. Real emotion finally surfacing beneath years of restraint. "If you were standing inside that station, who do you think would panic first once the footage finally played?" Collins? The officers who stayed silent? Or the people who helped bury the truth 12 years ago? The tension only deepened after that thought settled across the room. Collins suddenly stepped toward the monitor bank himself. "This footage was sealed for national security reasons." Moreno answered carefully, "Then why does your authorization code appear on the deletion request?" Another silence. Sharper now. Dangerous now. Collins pointed at Marcus again, but his voice had changed. Less confident. "He failed protocol." Marcus answered quietly, "I followed it." Brooks looked between both men slowly. "Then somebody lied." The older federal official finally reached into his coat pocket and removed a small encrypted drive. He handed it directly to Moreno. "Play the original sequence." Collins moved immediately. "You do not have clearance for that." "Actually," the official replied, "he does." Moreno stared down at the drive in his hand. The room shifted again. Tiny movement. Tiny shock. The upload bar crawled across the main screen while everyone watched in silence now. No whispers left. No laughter. Only the hum of fluorescent lights and nervous breathing. Then the frozen frame disappeared. Video playback initialized. Marcus closed his eyes briefly as the screen brightened. And the older federal official said quietly into the silence, "Before you judge him, watch what really happened." The footage began without sound at first. Grainy smoke filled the station monitors. A younger Marcus Reed moved through a burning apartment hallway in full federal tactical gear, carrying a little girl wrapped in a blanket against his chest. The timestamp read 12 years earlier. Harbor Street operation. Every officer in the lobby stared at the screen now. Collins tried to laugh once. Weak. Forced. "That proves nothing." Then the audio clicked on. Gunfire somewhere distant. Radio chatter. Panic. And Marcus's voice, younger but steady, "Civilian secured." Officer Collins ignored evacuation protocol. Repeat, Collins ignored protocol. Silence hit the station hard. Moreno slowly looked toward Collins. Brooks did not move at all. The footage continued. Marcus handed the rescued child to paramedics outside the burning building. Then another federal agent entered frame beside him. Same older official now standing inside the station lobby. Younger then. Wearing command insignia. "Agent Reed," the younger official said clearly on camera, "you saved 12 civilians after your team was ordered to pull out." Phones lowered immediately around the lobby. Nobody whispered anymore. Collins stepped forward fast. That footage was sealed. Because officers died, he snapped. Because mistakes were made. The older federal official finally faced everyone fully. "No," he said quietly. "It was sealed because Marcus Reed exposed corruption inside a joint task force involving local officers." The room froze again. Marcus lowered his eyes briefly. Not proud. Just exhausted from carrying something too heavy for too long. Brooks stared directly at Collins now. "You knew him." Collins swallowed once. "No." Moreno clicked another recovered file open. Official commendation, Special Agent Marcus Reed. Federal Organized Crime Division. Medal of Civil Valor. The station lobby seemed to stop breathing. One young patrol officer actually stepped backward. "Federal agent," someone whispered near dispatch. Marcus finally spoke softly. "Former federal agent." "Wrong," the older official corrected immediately. He reached into the evidence case and removed the fire-damaged badge carefully. Then he held it toward Marcus in front of everyone. "Suspended under witness protection after exposing police corruption. Clearance reinstated 6 months ago." Collins shook his head hard now. "This is fake." Moreno spun the monitor toward the room. Federal authentication codes flashed green across the screen one after another. "Verified active status. Authorized Oversight Division." Brooks looked stunned. "You slapped a federal oversight agent inside a police station," she said quietly to Collins. That line landed like concrete. Marcus still did not move toward revenge. Instead, he looked toward the younger officers standing near the walls. Nervous. Silent. Watching everything collapse. "Most good officers stay quiet because they are afraid," he said calmly. "That is how men like him survive." Collins pointed wildly now. "You hid your identity." Marcus answered immediately. "I asked for respect before I asked for recognition." Another silence. Heavy this time. The older official stepped closer to the monitors again. "Play the final segment." The recovered footage shifted suddenly. Harbor Street again. Smoke. Chaos. Then Collins appeared clearly on screen near the back stairwell. He grabbed evidence files from another wounded officer. Destroyed them. Then left civilians trapped inside while Marcus ran back into the building alone. Gasps spread quietly across the station lobby. One dispatcher covered her mouth. Brooks looked sick. Collins lunged toward the monitor. "That video is incomplete." Moreno stopped him cold. "There are 3 synchronized bodycams confirming the same timeline." Another file opened automatically beside the footage. Internal report modified by Officer Daniel Collins. Approved after witness suppression order. The older federal official finally revealed himself fully then. He removed his coat slowly, exposing the insignia beneath it. Assistant Director Harold Bennett. Federal Internal Oversight Command. Even the guard straightened instantly after seeing it. Collins looked pale now. Truly pale. Bennett's voice turned colder. "You buried a federal rescue operation. You falsified reports. And tonight you assaulted the very man who saved those civilians." Marcus finally looked directly at Collins again. Not angry. Worse. Disappointed. "You were supposed to protect people." Collins tried one last time. "You cannot prove intent." Bennett answered immediately. "Actually, we can." He nodded once toward Moreno. Another recovered audio file loaded. Collins's own voice filled the station speakers from 12 years earlier. "Leave Reed inside. Nobody will question a dead hero." The entire room recoiled. No whispers now. Only stunned silence. Brooks slowly removed Collins's service weapon and badge from his belt in front of everyone. "Officer Daniel Collins," she said carefully, voice shaking slightly, "you are suspended pending federal arrest." Collins looked around desperately now, but nobody stepped toward him anymore. Not one officer. Not one guard. Not one witness. Bennett then turned toward Marcus and asked quietly enough for the whole station to hear, "Agent Reed, do you understand now why they needed you erased?" And for the first time all night, Marcus did not answer immediately. Marcus finally looked up after Bennett's question, but before he could answer, 2 federal marshals entered the station lobby carrying sealed evidence cases. The sound of their shoes against the tile floor echoed through the silence like a verdict already written. Collins backed away slowly. "This is political," he muttered. "You are all making a mistake." Nobody answered him. Not anymore. Sergeant Brooks stood motionless beside the front desk, Collins's badge still in her hand. She stared at it for a long second before unclipping the bodycam attached beside it. The tiny red light blinked weakly. Evidence. Proof. Consequence. Bennett spoke calmly. Officer Daniel Collins, you are suspended effective immediately pending federal charges including obstruction, evidence suppression, abuse of authority, and assault on a federal oversight agent. One marshal stepped forward. Collins tried to pull rank again out of instinct. You cannot arrest me inside my own station. Bennett did not blink. It stopped being your station the moment the truth entered the room. A quiet ripple moved through the officers standing nearby. Some lowered their eyes. Others looked openly ashamed now. The younger patrolman who had laughed earlier at Marcus's uniform finally removed his phone from his pocket and deleted the recording he had been mocking him with. Marcus noticed, but said nothing. Collins looked toward Brooks desperately. Say something. Brooks answered softly without looking at him. You knew exactly who he was. That line landed harder than shouting ever could. Collins tried again. I protected this department. Marcus finally spoke, voice calm but tired. No. You protected yourself. Another silence. Heavy. Honest. Bennett opened the final recovered report on the monitor for the entire station to see. The original Harbor Street commendation appeared beside the falsified report Collins had submitted years ago. Same incident. Same fire. Two completely different stories. One buried a hero. The other protected a coward. Officers around the lobby shifted uncomfortably as the truth settled into the walls around them. One dispatcher quietly wiped tears from her eyes. Moreno approached Marcus carefully, then handed him the old fire-damaged badge inside a clear evidence sleeve. This belonged with you, she said. Marcus stared at it for a moment before taking it gently. His hand trembled slightly this time. Not from fear. From memory. Burned scars along the edge caught the station lights. A physical reminder of everything he lost trying to protect strangers. Bennett turned toward the assembled officers. Effective tonight, internal oversight will reopen every disciplinary case connected to Collins and Harbor Street. A murmur spread instantly. Files. Complaints. Buried reports. Suddenly everyone understood this story had never only been about one slap inside one station. The system itself had protected the wrong man for years. Collins's voice cracked now. You are destroying careers. Bennett answered immediately. No. The truth is correcting them. Two marshals stepped beside Collins and formally removed his cuffs, badge holder, service radio, and nameplate one by one. Each sound echoed sharply through the lobby. Snap. Click. Velcro tearing loose. Public power disappearing piece by piece. Nobody smiled while it happened. Even Marcus looked away briefly. Because dignity restored did not require humiliation returned. Brooks finally faced Marcus fully for the first time that night. Your suspension file, she said quietly, was never supposed to be permanent. Marcus nodded once. I know. Why did you come back here tonight? Someone near dispatch asked softly. Marcus looked around the station. At the officers. At the civilians still standing near the doors. At the young recruits watching silently from the hallway. Because if men like him stay unchallenged, he said carefully, people stop believing justice belongs to them too. Nobody interrupted that sentence. Bennett then reached into another sealed folder and removed a federal reinstatement order. Official clearance restoration. Active consult authority. Marcus stared at it quietly as Bennett placed it into his hands. Your record has been corrected, Bennett said. Publicly. For the first time all night, several officers in the lobby straightened toward Marcus with visible respect instead of suspicion. One older clerk near the front desk whispered softly, "I am sorry." Marcus gave a small nod back. Nothing dramatic. Just human. Near the entrance doors, a nervous teenage black security intern who had watched the entire night unfold stepped closer carefully. "Sir," he asked quietly, "how did you keep standing there while everybody turned against you?" Marcus looked at the burned badge in his hand before answering. "Because if you know who you are," he said softly, "you do not let fear decide it for you." The boy nodded slowly like he would remember that sentence for the rest of his life. Then Bennett placed a hand lightly on Marcus's shoulder and gestured toward the secure hallway leading deeper into the federal offices connected behind the station. "There are people waiting to speak with you," he said. Marcus looked toward the hallway entrance. Bright lights. Open doors. A future finally reopening after years in the dark. But even as respect returned around him, the scars in his eyes remained. And as he quietly slipped the burned badge back into his pocket, he realized something painful at the same time. Dignity finally returned. Justice could restore a name. But healing the wound left behind would take much longer. Marcus stood alone for a moment outside the secure federal hallway while the station slowly returned to motion around him. Not chaos anymore. Not fear. Just the strange quiet that comes after people finally see the truth clearly. Morning light had started creeping through the front windows of the station now, soft gold spreading across the cold tile floors where hours earlier phones had been raised against him. The burned badge still rested in his hand. Heavy. Scarred. Real. Sergeant Brooks approached carefully carrying a small cardboard evidence box. She stopped a few feet away before speaking. "These belong to you." Inside sat the old notebook from Harbor Street, his restored credentials, and the folded federal patch removed from his uniform years ago. Marcus stared at the patch for a long second. Brooks lowered her eyes. "I should have questioned Collins sooner." Marcus answered quietly. "You finally did." No anger. No triumph. Just truth. Nearby, younger officers moved differently around him now. Respect had replaced suspicion. One dispatcher who had avoided eye contact earlier walked over holding a cup of coffee with trembling hands. "Sir," she said softly, "I am sorry for what happened tonight." Marcus accepted the coffee gently. "Thank you." That was enough. Across the station lobby, workers had already begun removing Collins's nameplate from the office door. No celebration followed it. Just silence and accountability. Bennett stepped out from the federal hallway carrying a thin folder. "Internal oversight approved your reinstatement fully this morning," he said. "Consult authority. Training division access. Pension restored." Marcus gave a small nod but did not immediately take the folder. Bennett noticed. "You do not have to come back," he added quietly. Marcus looked around the station again. At the tired patrol officers. At the young recruits pretending not to stare. At the teenager from earlier still standing near the entrance wearing an oversized security jacket and watching everything with wide uncertain eyes. "Maybe that is exactly why I should," Marcus said softly. Bennett smiled faintly for the first time all night. A few days later, the station lobby looked different. Brighter somehow. New conduct review policies sat framed near the front desk. Bodycam review protections had been updated publicly. Civilian complaint reports could no longer disappear without oversight approval. Small changes. Important ones. Marcus walked through the lobby quietly in plain clothes carrying the burned badge inside his jacket pocket. Nobody stopped him this time. A young black recruit near processing stood abruptly when he saw Marcus enter. Nervous. Respectful. "Sir," the recruit asked carefully, "how do you keep people from judging you before they know you?" Marcus paused beside him. Then he removed the old badge slowly and placed it gently into the young man's hand. Burn marks caught the afternoon light again. "You cannot control what people see first," Marcus said. But you can control what kind of man you stay after they judge you wrong. The recruit looked down at the damaged badge like it was something sacred. Nearby, Brooks watched quietly from the hallway. The station no longer felt like a place built only on authority. It felt human again. Later that evening, Marcus visited the memorial wall inside the federal building downtown. Harbor Street victims. Officers. Civilians. Names carved into dark polished stone. He stood silently before the wall until a little girl approached holding her mother's hand. Maybe 10 years old now. The same girl from the recovered body cam footage. She looked at Marcus carefully before smiling. Mom said you carried me out of the fire. Marcus looked surprised for the first time in days. The mother stepped closer with tears already forming. She remembers your voice, she whispered. The girl held out a folded drawing then. A man carrying someone through smoke beneath a bright sun. Childlike lines. Honest ones. Marcus accepted it carefully. Thank you, he said softly. Heroes are supposed to look taller, the little girl said. Marcus laughed quietly under his breath for the first time in years. Real laughter. Healing laughter. As they walked away, Bennett appeared beside him again near the memorial wall. Training Academy opens next month, he said. The recruits already asked for you by name. Marcus looked down at the drawing in one hand and the burned badge in the other. Two versions of the same life. Pain survived. Dignity returned. Then maybe it is time they learn what authority is really for, he said quietly. That night, Marcus walked out of the federal building into the cool morning air with his head finally held high. The same city that once watched him humiliated now watched in silence as doors opened for him instead. The burned badge rested safely inside his pocket, no longer proof of disgrace, but proof that truth can survive fire, power, and fear. And somewhere behind him, inside a station that had finally learned to see people before judging them, a young recruit greeted the next frightened civilian with kindness first.